It was really the wild, wild west. In January 1993 was about the underworld. Amir was the one who said, no, I'm going to do one film at a time. People in the family reading Stardust cover to cover. Pata hai isme kya likha tha?
Have you ever stepped out of a film midway?
I didn't even know why he said yes to talking to me. I didn't know what he wanted me to say. The danger of proximity to such beautiful and glamorous people is that you forget who you are sometimes and you think you're their friend.
Hello, Anu ma'am. Thank you for joining me. This has been a long time coming because we do the late take together and those are lovely discussions about the movie releases. But I wanted to talk about you, your experiences as well. And thank you for being gracious enough to spend some time with me.
This is very awkward. We sit and jam and we talk about the movies.
Yeah.
I'm not used to being asked questions by you, Anmol. So we will try and make this good.
While you are conducting most interviews, there are very few interviews where we take a deep dive on your journey. So I just wanted, and I'm very curious and I'm sure so many are as well.
Thank you.
I want to first start off by asking you, South Mumbai, Xavier's, Northwestern University. So where does the first sort of inkling or a liking for Hindi cinema became something that you acknowledged?
So, it's very strange. Anmol, my mother was already writing, Kamna Chandra was already writing for the Hindi film industry. She had written Prem Rog for Raj Kapoor. She wrote Chandni for Yash Chopra. So we had interactions. I have actually met Raj Kapoor as a teenager. I was on the sets of Prem Rog. I watched him direct, but of course at that time, I had no idea of the greatness of this man or that I should really treasure it or really pay much closer attention. I was just there whatever, curious, but not deeply admiring, which I should have been. And same for Yashji. I mean, Yashji, of course, I continued to have an interaction with once I became a professional journalist. But so there was that kind of interaction with the Hindi film industry, but there was never this kind of oh my God, I've got to see every film. We were, like you said, South Bombay, so it was very Angrez picture dekhte the in Eros and Sterling, and there was Regal, which were all three the kind of holy trinity of Hollywood cinema, and that's why we watched movies. I think it started after I finished my bachelor's degree from St. Xavier's, and then I did not know what I really wanted to do. It wasn't like there was some overwhelming desire to talk about Hindi cinema at all, but I started to work for Movie Magazine in the late 80s, and it was really just a stopgap job, and it was really just okay, whatever, I'll do this till I figure out what I want to do. And it wasn't even the movies, Anmol, it was the Hindi film industry that I fell in love with.
Okay, sort of the inner workings of how the films are made versus
the inner
movies
workings, the craziness, because I can't describe to you what the world was like back then. It was really the wild, wild west.
I wanted to get there before you do go there, ma'am. Then I wanted to ask you, of the English films that you were watching, so which was the era of movies that did create a huge impression on you?
So Star Wars,
though
I was only 10 when that came out. I remember, I have such a clear memory of watching the titles go like this, and just my hair standing on end. That's a core memory of mine. Of course, that film, and then the films of the 80s, of course, Mr. India was massive. I love Masoom. The 80s are considered the dregs in terms of Indian cinematic history, but there were these gems.
Flashes that were coming in.
There were these flashes. So all through college, we were also, because I was an English literature student, we wanted to be perceived as more intellectual. So then the whole art house movement, the Shyam Benegal, Govind Nihlani movies, which were frankly by the 80s, was actually waning. The 70s indies were just stunning. But for me, the real impact was Mr. Bachchan in the 70s. So it was Sholay, Diwar, Zanjeer, Amar Akbar Anthony, that spate of movies, Kabhi Kabhi.
Got it.
Though I didn't see those movies in the 70s itself, but from the 80s when we started to watch, and we were the VHS generation, we had stopped going to theaters, but we watched these movies over and over because some guy would just come to your house and give you a tape, you know.
Of then, ma'am, of the movies that you're watching and the comfort of your home, then what were the family discussions like? Because I'm also not assuming, your siblings are all creative pursuits, right? So are the family discussions about what you've read, what you've seen?
Not so much.
Okay.
Genuinely, not so much. Read, yeah, because we were all. I was already writing for a newspaper while I was in college. There was a paper called Indian Post, and I was reviewing books for them. So there was a larger sense of literature rather than cinema.
Okay.
You know, cinema was more my mother, who was obsessed with the movies, who, like I said, was already writing for the movies. But for us, it was more literature. And for me, the obsession became post that movie magazine stint when I realized, okay, this is it. I love this crazy world. I only want to be here, but I want to learn how to do it. So then I went to do a master's in America, came back, did a master's in journalism, worked for a year in New York, then came back because all I wanted to do was Hindi cinema.
I think you've spoken about this regarding people calling you crazy, that you wanted to come back. Could you describe sort of that time that the aspiration was always for most Indians to go to the West?
Absolutely.
And film journalism was also looked down upon?
Absolutely. Because, Anmol, it was I had a green card, right? Which is your ticket out. So for somebody...
Why the hell would you want to come back?
Exactly. So why would you give up that to come back and then to write about Hindi movies? It's not like you're becoming a great political journalist or you're doing business journalism. You know, those things were seen seriously and they were considered like things that had weight. But film journalism, and genuinely, it's impossible for people to imagine now, but they were like the film magazines. So there was Movie, Filmfare, Star and Style, Stardust. And main papers like TOI or Indian Express, they did not cover cinema apart from the reviews. There was no Bombay Times and those color supplements. So the movies were covered in places only meant for the movies. And the general tonality was, it was more gossip. It was more star-led. We've always been a star-obsessed country. But the journalism was more that than what is the movie.
Okay.
Because truthfully, the movies were also very bad.
You know, ma'am, I really do want to know, is it the early 90s when you came back?
Yeah.
How bad was that era of films? Because from what I research about is that Hindi cinema at that point of time became obsessed with remakes.
Yeah.
So it was just ensemble cast remakes, which were terrible. But how bad was it?
So it was chaotic,
Okay.
right? The making of movies was chaotic. So I'm talking, I came back, I want to say in 92, 93. So, you know, the Wonder Kids, which is...
The ripples were sort of...
The ripples were starting. Salman had debuted, Amir had debuted, Shah Rukh wasn't on the scene yet. He would come like literally a year later or the same year. You had these guys, Aditya, Suraj and Karan had not made their movies. So it was a very old school kind of business. It was a people where, you know, you had to be an AD for like 15 years, then you become a director. It was all men. Everywhere was just all men. And it was chaotic in the sense of like, you know, the funniest story, and I don't know if it's true, was that there was a writer who wrote, was writing 2 films at the same time and sent the wrong scenes to the wrong units, which was shot.
Wow.
Before people realized, yaar, ye to hamari picture mein hai hi nahi. So it was that kind of
disorganized,
sort of like, and they were always the premier production houses. So Yashji and Yashraj Films, there was Subhash Ghai and you know, Mukta Arts, which was massive and very respected. But it was largely disorganized. Stars were repped by secretaries who, you know, it was all, everybody was on landline phones. So it was like another world.
So during that same phase, when actors are doing shifts, I remember seeing an interview where Madhuri Dixit was saying that Raita Dada would come on set, he would write the dialogues on set and you're memorizing them. There weren't bound scripts. People were doing 10 to 12 films at the same time.
Listen, there was a diktat from the, I think from the Cine Artists Association, कि you can only do, I can't remember now, but it was either 12 or 14. Matlab, they had to say that because and they used to say, I think at one point Anupam Kher, who was of course not playing the main lead but was a very significant supporting actor, was doing 60 films at a time. So they said at that time they used to say that you can't make movies without raw stock and Anupam.
Oh my God.
60 movies.
Wow.
And the ceiling was 12 or 14 at a time. And Amir was the one who said, no, I'm going to do one film at a time.
Wow. And that was the anomaly.
People thought he was mad.
And I hear that somebody said that if Shakti Kapoor doesn't have 75 films at the same time, he feels insecure as an actor.
That's right.
That's
and they were. I remember, and of course, this was earlier than this was the 80s and the 70s, where Shashi Kapoor said he was called the taxi star because he would literally be taking a taxi from one studio to the next, and you would just change your clothes and go into the next character who was invariably very similar to the character you just played. तो क्या फर्क पड़ता है?
Yeah, I think Ajay Devgan said we would just change jeans and then that would be it.
And then that would be it. Absolutely.
Ma'am, in terms of your observation of how film production was happening then, because of course then you've got the big leagues of the Mukhtats and Yash Chopra. The only thing that I would consistently read about is movies getting cancelled because of lack of funds. And I wanted to inquire as a journalist, when you were observing it, what was like the main cause of so many things not working out? So
money, Anmol, was a fairly dodgy ecosystem. So of course there were the legit producers who had investors and who had people coming in and investing. There was no banking. It wasn't an industry. The industry declaration came in, I think in 97 or 98 was when it was officially declared by the government of India as a bona fide industry. So you're getting money in for a lot, and there's 250 films on the floors at any given time, and not all of these obviously are legit. So one of the biggest stories I did in January 1993 was about the Underworld moving into the movies. And it wasn't a new phenomenon. There was always, the Haji Mastan, the Kareem Lala sort of flirtations with cinema, with stars, etc. But this was a very kind of focused move inward. And I can't believe I actually did this, but I interviewed Hanif and Sameer, okay? And it was so funny because I remember them sitting behind this one long desk and they were saying to me, Madam, hum kya smugglers lagte hain? Cut to, both of them are arrested. And I was like, this is horrifying. I don't know how I got away with it. But I talked to, there was Sudhakar Bokade, who was also sort of, there were all these rumors about people whose money was dodgy. There was all these rumors about Dawood having fronts, and a lot of it was true. And the attitude within the business was frankly that, yaar, paisa hai na, kya farak padta hai? And so because of that, and because your money was coming from such dodgy and unstable sources, is why films got cancelled. As it is, there were no bound scripts, Anmol, or very few bound scripts. I remember people talking about like Vinod, who in the late 80s made Parinda, and at that point he was workshopping with Anil, and Anil Kapoor still tells this story of how people thought they were just mad. Like, tu karta kya hai?
Rehearsal kar raha hai.
Rehearsal matlab what?
Yeah.
So it was very much, which is not to say that there wasn't amazing work being done or really fine talent. I mean, there was incredible storytelling, which somehow, because art is also instinctive, it's also something that just comes organically, and they did do that. So but what happened was, by 94, 95 is you had Hum Aapke Hain Kaun, which changed the game completely. 95 you had DDLJ, 96 or 98 was Kuch Kuch Hota.
Kuch Kuch Hota, yeah.
And then it was a new world, it was a different world. Suddenly you had all these young people who looked different, who spoke a different language, who dressed like us, who, it was educated, young, energetic people who were making the movies.
Could you see that transition of what was initially considered to be dated and now it's suddenly cool?
Or the other way. Yeah.
Okay.
So for me, my first memory was of feeling like the world's changing is Rangila.
Okay.
When I saw Rangila, I'm like, this doesn't look or sound like anything we've ever seen. We're now moving into something else. you know, and those films that Ramu made. And then again, a few years later, he made Satya, which was such a game changer. And you know, he was just out there just ferociously doing whatever the hell he wanted. You know, he wasn't playing by any
He
rules.
was such an outlier at that time, right?
Completely an outlier.
Wow.
You know, so it was a very fertile and exciting time.
Ma'am, in that same time, so would that be, say, one of your first articles that actually caused an impact? Where, do you remember the article which caused people to give you a call that I read your article, that this happened? Wow, I can't believe that you're writing.
That one for sure.
That
That one was in Sunday magazine, and at least a few people had warned me that I don't know why you're doing this, and you might want to. And I was stupid. I was, you know, America returned. मुझे क्या पता ही नहीं था. जोश भी था और naivete ना.
Naivety,
जब पता ही नहीं है. I'm like, तो क्या है? I'm just asking questions, and I was. That's all I did. I just asked questions, you know. But definitely that one was a big game changer, and I think that's what eventually then the editors at India Today saw. This was for Sunday magazine, and then they saw that, and then they called me and said, come and work for us. And then I was at India Today for like more than a decade.
Oh, okay. Do you remember the first big interview that you did?
For India Today?
For India Today.
Madhuri Dixit.
Madhuri Dixit.
She was on the cover.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
she was on the cover in the purple, the iconic purple Hum Aapke
Hum Aapke Kaun
sari.
Wow.
Yeah. So we did, I remember going on the sets of Rajkumar, which was Pankaj Parashar's Rajkumar. Terrible film. And I remember there was like this bath. She was a princess. It was some fantasy, mythological, pata nahi kya tha wo. And it was, she was supposed to be like bathing with all these, you know, her ladies in waiting around her. And there was this bubble bath, and it was so weird. Anmol, it used to be me, and there was Madhuri, and Madhuri's mom would come, and her hairdresser. And there would be 4 women on the set. And then, of course, the junior artists and the dancers would be female if required. Otherwise, all men.
And this would be, you would just land up on set?
And so you would call the secretary.
Okay.
Okay. And you would say, ki, you know, I'm calling from... And, you know, to be on the cover of India Today still is a massive deal. But back then, it was just... Huge. Because they literally did one film cover in like maybe 4 years or something.
Wow.
You know, it was that rare.
So Madhuri was like the it girl that time, right?
The it girl, absolutely. And you know, her dancing and her she had so many hits in a row. So you would call the secretary and set up with the secretary and then just show up on set. But I've also done the just show up on set.
Oh damn. But you know, ma'am, I must say, like, what I'm most intrigued by in a lot of the interactions that you do is on how seamless it seems on camera, presumably. I would also imagine, like, I sometimes do get starstruck by a few actors. Madhuri Dixit was one of them, I remember.
Really?
Because I genuinely felt like she almost had like a halo kind of like effect. Yeah. And I've never been really starstruck, but that was one instance. Have there been instances where you were terribly nervous before an interaction? Or did it help that you had a slight distance from not really being enamored so much?
Yeah, no, that definitely helps. That definitely helps. I think if you're enamored, it's very tough.
Yeah.
I remember, so with Madhuri, it was like tough to be starstruck because we were like the same age and we both had really bad skin. So we would exchange acne.
Oh my God. Horror stories.
Horror stories. What should I do? What should you do? You know, and of course I never had to wear the makeup she did. But you know, so it was more like that kind of a relationship. But I think the awe and intimidation has been with Mr. Bachchan. Because he's just been, and it's funny because he's of course worked with Vinod, and I've you know, seen been on set, I've been to their house, but still, when he walks in, you stand up. You know, it's just the body of work and the excellence that he brings with him. And he's very funny. He's always like a little sarcastic. Mm-hmm. You know, of course, now though he doesn't do interviews anymore, but when he did, even it would just be like, Acha, what can you ask me that I've not been asked about?
Yeah.
You know,
what's so special about this interaction?
What will you do to make this special? But there was one time, Anmol, I have to tell you, so I used to do a show for Star World called Front Row.
Front Row, yes.
Right? In the second year of Front Row, we started to do it in Hindi and English. On Star Plus, right? Yeah. 600 million homes. I mean, it was a nightmare. And my Hindi, I don't think in Hindi, I think in English. Yeah. So I'm always translating before I say it. And the first man I interviewed for that show was Mr. Bachchan, who was just looking at me like, really?
You're going to do this?
You're going to speak to me? And then he launched into these words that I did not even understand. And I'm just sitting there, panicked. And into my in-ear, my poor writer, Manoj Montashir, the writer, was the writer on the show. And he was in the, he was just off camera and saying, this is what it means, this is what it means. Don't panic, don't panic.
You had an earpiece.
And I was just like, just like nodding. And he said, he used the word Vatanukulit. I still remember that. And I just looked shocked. And it was like air conditioning. So,
wow.
with him.
Yeah, okay.
With him, and to date, it is that kind of, because what I have is really reverence.
Yeah.
And I think that is always going to be there.
Mm-hmm. Ma'am, what sort of intrigues me the most about that era on you starting as a young journalist is when I look back, and this is just through context of sitting, say, at a dentist's office or a hospital, and I'm looking at those magazines, the old Stardust magazines, Star magazines, and I see, we talk about trolling of social media today and that the actors are really getting hell from netizens. I see some of those magazine covers and the titles, they are
Vicious.
really vicious.
Yeah.
So, how did people navigate that? Because it seemed like people were in horror anticipating what's going to be on the next cover.
Yeah. No, they did not pull punches. There was something, I remember in Stardust, called Neeta's Natter.
Oh my God.
And it was the front of the book. It was like the first few pages of the magazine. It was just pure gossip. And it could be anything, because it was like those blind items combined with where you name names. And yeah, they would say it. Like they would say whatever, like failure, something, but the glaring, I'm sure it was not easy. And which is why, like, somebody like Mr. Bachchan stopped talking to the press. For like over a decade, he didn't speak to anyone.
I remember reading about in 89 or 91, there being a mass protest by the actors.
Yeah.
Because saying that we're giving you interviews, you're selling it on our faces and you're writing all of this.
Yeah.
I remember at one point of time, we were discussing some movie and I was saying that it's so far-fetched that these journalists have so much power and actors are fearful of what article they're going to write. And then I remember reading some stories about this journalist called Divyani Chaubal.
Yes.
And people used to fear what she would eventually write. And I was like, wow, this was a reality.
It was a reality. This was before my time. But what I hear about her was it's like that poison pen that can make or break you.
The poison pen, yes.
Yeah, that's what it was. And she had real power. But Anmol, you have to imagine this is a time before social media. It's a time when our options are so few. I mean, cable came in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Uske pehle to hum sab black and white ya color mein chalo. In the 80s, we got color TV. But your options of entertainment was just the
limited.
movies. Was so limited. So limited.
So if everyone's reading something, it's just that particular thing.
It's that particular thing, and it's true. I remember, people in the family reading Stardust cover to cover. Ki pata hai isme kya likha tha? It's that thing. It's that vibe. So print had so much power.
Print had so much power and it's slowly dissipating now. And I feel like, ma'am, now the circle of news itself is so fast.
It's so fast.
Nothing stays.
It's a tweet, no.
Yeah.
Which is why when I get trolled or people are outraging, I'm like, kal tak to
the 3-day window, ma'am, people forget about it. It's pretty crazy on now what the nature of news is.
Yeah.
I really am one thing enamored by the longevity of it all, ma'am, with what you do is the balance of interacting with actors and then give an honest review is something that I've struggled with, is especially because I genuinely have people I look up to as actors.
Yeah.
And I want to stay true to the subscriber base that I've built. So the one thing that's paramount for me is that I'm going to be honest with my review. How have you kept that sanctity? How have you kept that integrity going? And what's the harsh pill to swallow by the end of it, that there are no friends?
There are no friends. Anmol, I'll tell you the danger of proximity to such beautiful and glamorous people is that you forget who you are sometimes and you think you're their friend. They're famous, they're rich, they're powerful, and they're very nice to you. But you're not their friend. You should not be their friend. It's not even something you should encourage. For me, even a invite, occasionally, I remember pre-pandemic, many years ago, Shah Rukh had a party. And for me, and obviously because I'm married to Vinod, you get invited, and even that's a question. Should I be there? Can I be there? So it's like you have to maintain that distance. But finally, Anmol, it's a line you draw in your own head because our lines are too blurred. We are interacting with those same people, then we're giving reviews, then we want the same people to talk to us again. At least I do. I know you've built your channel on video essays, on opinions, on conversations, which are things that you have with your subscribers. Yeah. You are not at all as interview dependent as Film Companion is, right? So it's a very, very tricky line, but I've always thought that if you can't bring honesty to it, don't do it. Just don't do it. So for example, with Donkey, right? We've had such a close and long relationship with Raju and Abhijat. There's no way I can be completely, objective or impartial when I come to that film. I'm able to see what the soft spots are, which I was able to see even in the films that they made with Vinod. But I feel like I shouldn't do it then. And I didn't do it. If you can't bring a completely, not completely, all of us have our biases.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for Shah Rukh. You
Yeah.
are a sucker for Hrithik.
It is what it is. Yeah.
Right? But within that, you must be able to be truthful. And you have done that, and that's your priority, and that should always be a priority. Because agar wo hi nahi hai, to phir kya fayda? And they don't talk to you, Anmol.
Ma'am,
they'll stop talking to you. They've stopped talking to me for years.
Has there been, with sort of the nature of how you've been pretty clear about the way you want to work your business, have been sort of boycotts of never wanting to talk to you because of it?
Yeah. Even now?
Yeah.
I'll tell you off camera.
Yeah.
Let's not talking to us.
I think off camera I was telling you about this also because it's led me to not do as many interactions anymore because what you get is a 2-week window of them being really excited to talk to you, and it's almost high and dry if the review doesn't really suit what they were expecting.
Yeah.
It's almost a favor, the interview, rather than an organic need to want to have a discussion about cinema. I feel like most people don't want to have that.
Yeah. No, it's a very tough balancing act, and for me, it's just been anything I'm personally uncomfortable with, because the truth is, I am already compromised. I'm married into the business. Right, so mera to beginning point is only compromised because Vinod works with X, Y, and Z, and then how should I review their cinema? So, but whatever doesn't instinctively feels wrong, just don't go there.
You told me that everyone's looking out for themselves. Absolutely. So please look out for yourself, and that's one advice that I've definitely held on to. I wanted to also ask you. With such close proximity, of course, you've spent so many years here. You have an idea about personalities, right? Can you separate the art from the artist?
It is very hard to do, and I think it's a very individual response. I don't think there's a blanket. Especially when the whole Me Too thing happened. It was that there's some things that just seemed to me like non-negotiable. There are some things where I could see perhaps what had gone down. So I feel like this is a very, very personal equation that you have with the art. And for some of us, we also have with the artist. So it's a very tough thing. It's very tough because and of course, then there are the larger questions of like people you did not know, but like somebody like a Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Do you stop enjoying that music? And it's very hard. You really struggle with those kind of things. Or Woody Allen. Do you stop loving the films that you loved? So I think every person has to come to its to the conclusion by themselves, because the line for everyone and their perspective for everyone is so individual.
True, true. With the same, I'm still talking about you reviewing a film where they're playing, say, a fictional character.
Oh, you mean, do I get like, because
that
I know
that too. But I sometimes marvel at just the lovely smile that you have when you're interacting with some. But I can sometimes see through those eyes that I'm like, she's just calling out the BS. But that smile is, sort of papering over the cracks right now. I'm sure there are many times where you're like, I'm just going to make sure that I didn't hear what you just said. I'm just going to carry on to the next question.
So
that kind of professionalism is bang on.
So I'll tell you truthfully, you do sometimes hear things that are just like, no, you didn't really say that. Like, no, you could not have really said that. But Anmol, I never want to be rude. Ever. That's not I'm not confrontational. That's not my style. That's not, I feel like you're on my show, you're my guest. There is a certain etiquette that is required. I want to always ask the tough questions. I never want to kind of be fluffball about it. But I never want to do it in a way that's like rude, or just say something that's mean or belittling.
Ma'am, can I just say that just to speak about certain interactions or the format that you have, a lot of it is effective because you're inquisitive, and that in turn then leads to revelations.
Sure.
Rather than, I'm not looking for a barrage of aggressive questioning when I come for an Anupama Chopra interview. It reveals things for me about the individual, so for which I don't really necessarily need an aggressive host.
Yeah. And I feel like everyone has a point of view that should be heard, whether it's completely opposing what you believe, and even if it is completely opposing, I don't think that that we can be prescriptive and say you can't have that point of view.
Yeah,
it's your point of view, so I'm not that person at all.
Which is, I'm slightly getting worried about sort of film discourse now about what
so
can and cannot be said.
Yeah.
Slightly insane, because then people question you, why are you platforming the artist dependent on how they are morally or politically aligned.
Yeah.
So it's
no,
dicey.
and that is dicey, and also I feel like, I got a lot of flack for the Sandeep Vanga interview I did, but I think it's important to hear him out, and I think when something travels that widely, you have to try and understand, including with Animal, which is a film I didn't like at all, but including with that film, you have to try and understand, why is it connecting? What is it that you did not get that other people got? Whatever your opinion of it is. So I think it's important to listen, and this whole thing of cancel this one and cancel that one, I find it's just you're moving towards a world which is just an echo chamber, which we should not aspire to.
With the interactions though, have there been, you obviously don't name them, but I'm saying instances where it's so awkward or it got confrontational where you just didn't air it?
No,
right?
We've never not aired, but there was one with Hindi film star, an actor, and it was so bizarre that I didn't even know why he said yes to talking to me. I didn't know what he wanted me to say. I was just bewildered.
Okay, I know who this is. Yeah.
Yes. So it just, and I completely understand if you don't like me, if you don't like what I say, I totally get it. You can't be a film critic and then say I can't take criticism. Of course not. But then why sit with me, na?
Yeah.
Which is समझ नहीं आया.
Created for a really awkward dynamic for sure. I remember.
Yes.
Though, ma'am, I wanted to ask you, which is personality where you really look forward to the interaction because there's always something new to discuss, or they're just a person with a bunch of stories that there's always something exciting. I must say your interactions with Saif is one of them. For me, there's always something new. And there's so many anecdotes.
But he's so fab.
He's so good.
Articulate
so
and
articulate.
funny, and he has such a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
Of course, Shahrukh.
Shahrukh, of
my
course.
My eternal favorite for interviews is he's just superb. Javed Saab.
Javed Saab.
You know, great stories and what wit.
So much
Anmol.
experience.
So much experience, so many stories. And the fact that he doesn't take himself so seriously. The fact that he can laugh about it, Karan.
Karan.
You know, another person who doesn't he's not like, oh my God, I'm successful, I'm Karan Johar. He's willing to make fun of himself, which I just love.
You know, regarding the same, ma'am, I must say what I'm enamored by also is how you've adapted to several different mediums. And I remember reading an article that you wrote last year where you were really sad about the state of journalism, where you were just seeing the case of paid reviews and so much of it becoming normalized now. Ma'am, when I, on a Friday, am writing a review, I can see through a lot of the things which are the same verbiage. It's so clear that they're PR articles, and it becomes tougher for an audience to then circumvent like what to really depend on. How did it get here? And why, you know, I must say, like, why do production companies think that they're dependent on this?
Yeah. No, it's a shame. Anmol, I think it is really a crisis of credibility. And when you can buy everything, see, it started with advertorial, right? It started back.
What is advertorial?
Advertorial is paid editorial.
Okay.
Right? So it started in print as advertorial, which goes back to, I would say, maybe Bombay Times.
Okay.
Right? Where you could buy the front page and it was, the fine print was, some of this content is paid for, right? But how many of the readers know? Sponsored post, right? But chalo, at least likh to rahe the, ab to kuch nahi hai. There's nothing to differentiate between what is pure editorial and what is paid for. So, which is why, Anmol, it's very important for us to be honest. Because there's so much that is pure marketing. And it breaks my heart. It is something I've railed against for most of my career that, yeah, if we, and I'll tell you why. Because I think ultimately it impacts on cinema. Because you can't buy press, then believe that press, and then work from that belief, which is, you know, complete delusion. And I think that it has stunted the growth of cinema because you're not allowing for honest, informed criticism to flourish. And you have a problem with it, and you want to buy every post, every tweet, and across handles put the same caption.
Yeah.
You know, at least be creative about it.
You're creating perception which is so structured and formulated that people are reading through it.
Absolutely.
So it's not doing what you intend to do anyway.
और लोग इतने डम भी नहीं हैं और आप क्या कर लोगे 4 पोस्ट आप लगा भी दोगे कि मैं द बेस्ट हूँ मेरी पिक्चर ने इतना किया. It doesn't matter. And that's become the whole the optics game has become so overarching and so overpowering that I feel it's stunting creativity. It's stunting cinema, which is why the powers that be need to get out of it. They just need to stop.
You know, ma'am, speaking, I just wanted to speak to you briefly about media shows or media screenings. I feel like that itself is an echo chamber also, which I slightly try to avoid. Because
but in what way?
What would happen, ma'am, was that, say the screening happens and say you're familiar with journalists, right? And the journalists then would get into a jam session outside the theatre.
Oh, and you discuss your
where
opinions?
they're constantly talking about, तो ये कैसा लगा, हाँ ये भी अच्छा है.
No, but that's not cool.
So I watch the thing and immediately storm out now
that's
because
what I
that's
do.
the best thing.
No, you have to leave. I mean, even within Film Companion, we don't ask each other, what did you think?
Yeah.
Because it'll color what you think. You know, and suddenly you'll start to second guess yourself, like your own instincts. Like, did I like this? Or, but usko to achhi nahi lagi. Rahul ko nahi pasand aayi. Should I like it?
So let me soften my blow
Let me soften. Yeah, no, you can't. You can't. I don't want any discussion with anyone till I've kind of gushed and vomited out what I feel, and then, you know, really have my argument in place. And then I'm interested in reading, like maybe somebody else had something else to say. And those are great. Those are like your perspective, somebody else's perspective.
Yeah.
Because it makes you see things you didn't. But you can't. Nahi, ye chai wala to bilkul mat.
You know, when you do reflect on how you wrote in the initial days versus today, are you as blunt as you were? Do you think you've become softer as the years have passed by? Do you think you've that stayed consistent?
I think it's pretty consistent. I would say that because Anmol, I didn't aspire to be a film critic. It was just one of the things with India Today. They're like, but you write about it. And I just fell into it and started to, talk about it. I feel like I'm much more, I have massive imposter syndrome because I never went to a media studies class. I've never studied film. So I always feel like I don't know enough, which is true. I don't know enough. But I'm coming to it more from, I'm a regular viewer and I'm coming to it from that point of view. But I feel like I'm a slightly more informed regular viewer now. Am I more blunt? I think I'm more aware of, more aware even of the world. So for example, Anmol, and I share this not with any pride, but with a little bit of embarrassment. Like when I saw Raanjhana, I was so seduced by Dhanush's performance, who I thought he was just stunning. I'd never seen him in a film before. That I did not see the problematic
oh wow, okay.
at all. I was just like, oh my God, I was moved. I was, I didn't see it at all. And then Zoya Akhtar said to me that, but did you not see this? Did you not see the problem with this? And I was like, shit, yes. So because my generation did not grow up with any conversation about male gaze or female gaze or what optics should be. We just took cinema as cinema, and it was taken for granted that it is male-led and women will be ornamental.
Kuch nahi badlega.
Kuch nahi badlega. And then it changed. The industry changed, the cinema changed, and so my growth has been along with the movies, and I feel now I'm just a little more aware, which did not prevent me from being seduced by Arjun Reddy, which I thought was extremely effective. But I can now see where the fault lines are.
Got it.
So I feel like those things are coming into place now because as a human being, I've evolved. And finally, our reviews are expressions of who we are.
Who we are. Where we are.
Where we are in our own heads,
Last set of questions, ma'am. I just wanted to ask you, first was, have you ever stepped out of a film midway?
Not for a long
Just
time.
when the end credits were, you just sprinted out.
Do you mean to avoid people?
No, avoid people, but you were like, I can't stand this anymore.
So there was a film, बहुत साल पहले, I was not even a critic, I think. I don't think I was watching it to review it, but there was a film called Chandramukhi.
Oh, that's a Salman movie, right?
And Sridevi.
Oh, Sridevi. Oh, yes.
And it was some magical something or the other. I think he's a little boy who becomes big.
Yes,
I think it was taken from Tom Hanks's film.
Okay.
And I feel like I remember watching about maybe 20 minutes of it, and I said, you know what? And it was in a preview theater, and I was like, I can't. I can't do this. So I left. And it was so terrible, and I'm so apologetic to whoever that director was because I think he was sitting at the door.
Oh my God.
And I sort of stumbled over him and left. It was just mortifying. And truthfully, I'm not proud of that. I shouldn't have done it. And it's always so hurtful.
Of course.
And
but you weren't reviewing it.
I wasn't reviewing it.
Professional integrity is still there.
So if I've ever left, the other film I have walked out of was Cash. Anubhav Sinha's Cash. And I
remember you telling me, I think you were seeing it with your mom.
I saw it with my mother, and my mother was like, "ये क्या हो रहा है? ये कौन किसका पैसा कौन चुरा?" Then she couldn't take it anymore, and I was like, "Okay, mom, let's go." So that was the other one. But as for me professionally, Anmol, I have to be there
100%
till the last frame.
Yeah.
I feel like because pata chale last frame hi Sholay hai yaar.
Oh.
Wait
for that film. Is there a film that you have loved, but the popular opinion was that it's not
you
liked
don't know
at
the
all?
Legend?
No. Except Befikre. Except Befikre. By the way, this collaboration stemmed from Befikre only. And that joke.
Were you a fan?
No, I remember that was the first joke I cracked with you. I'm still wondering about that 3.5 stars.
So is the world.
Have you revisited it?
I did try, and truthfully, I might have been seduced by Ranveer then.
Yeah,
maybe he just dazzled me into loving a film, and it was the funniest is that Adi always tells me that I got more flack than he did. What's another film I've loved? I'm trying to think.
Or the other way around. Didn't like at all, but unanimously loved.
So Chennai Express.
Chennai Express.
Was not a film I loved. For me, I loved Shah Rukh in a certain role, and that was not that kind of very broad-stroked, loud sort of role. And in fact, that Diwali party I was mentioning was just after
Success Party.
it was just after Chennai Express, and I think Vinod asked Shah Rukh ki critic ko laun ki rehne do. And he was gracious enough to say Liao. But that was a film that everybody loved, which I didn't get. I do want to revisit it because I always like to see, because you're also a different person, right?
So you won't like it more.
Nahin?
No.
What about Welcome?
You didn't like it when it released?
I didn't like it when it released.
Wow.
So I want to see it again to see, because people have told me that that's a deal breaker, that you didn't like Welcome.
No, it's hysterical that way. Yes.
Yeah. So I have to go back to Welcome.
I think we've been on a similar journey of exploring other languages around the same time as well. And you've seen so much brilliant, especially Tamil and Malayalam cinema. What do you think is lacking when you look at commercial Hindi cinema storytelling and what essentially can be imbibed from what's happening there?
For me, honestly, Anmol, that was the boon of the pandemic, that it opened my eyes. And I'm ashamed to say that I've been doing this for so long and I did not ever pay enough attention to other cinemas. You know, it was always Hindi, Bollywood. And then when I started to watch, I understood how incredible. And of course, you know, we had seen Mani Sir's films, early 90s, like we saw Nayak and we saw Roja, Bombay, all those films we had seen. But he was one of the few. We didn't know anyone else, like beyond A.R. Rahman and Mani Sir, we didn't know anyone. Malayalam cinema, I barely knew. So for me, that's been such a joyous discovery. And I feel it's like expanded my head in so many beautiful ways. I think what they have genuinely, Anmol, is the conviction. Because when you look at, okay, Malayalam cinema is not making like massive over-the-top films, but Tamil and Telugu directors are. And I feel like they go into it with a flamboyance. I just feel like that, you know, ek wo jo, just that playing for broke, which we saw with, let's say, a Sholay, what Ramesh Sippy did with Sholay, or what we just talked about, Kalki, you know, what Nagashwin tried there, or what Rajamouli has done with so many movies even before Bahubali. You know, those kind of, or like a Lokesh Kanakraj. Okay, whatever, like maybe Vikram did or didn't work for you, but just the inventiveness of the imagination and where all he's willing to go, I find very exciting.
When I see Avesham, I see a person having such a specific knowledge about the cultural context of Malayalis being in Bangalore.
Yes.
Which is somewhat.
And look at what Fahad did.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, that's a superstar. And look at what he's doing. You know, I just think that they are less, वो जो लक्ष्मण रेखा होता है ना, उनकी लक्ष्मण रेखाs are not as set in stone, and they are far more willing to play. Far more willing to play. You know, for him to come to Chennai and do a super deluxe.
Yeah.
Which is an ensemble film in which Vijay Sethupathi frankly has the most, you know, memorable part. And how good was he? So I feel like those ideas of stardom, of where you are in this rat race, you know, of what will work and not work, I feel are too deep set in Hindi cinema. And we need to let go, because clearly what you think will work is not working.
Yeah. The last question, ma'am, I just wanted to ask, this is just inadvertently like probably being advice for myself, so I'm just using this as an excuse. What advice would you have for me who would want to aspire for such longevity as well?
Stay in love with it, Anmol.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. And I've seen too many people fall out of love. You know, and it can get there very easily because so much of it is so mediocre. Right? We're watching movies every Friday and it does get tiring. And truthfully, Anmol, I've taken long breaks. I've had 2 children. Yeah. I've done my 6 months off and then felt like just like a drug addict who needs a hit. Because I'm like, I need a movie. I need a Hindi movie, you know. So I feel, and what has helped me truthfully is the change of mediums. So I started as a print journalist, became a television journalist, became a digital journalist. So that evolution has helped because it's a different muscle.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been like so frightened when I've gone into every new thing that
When the new chapter starts.
yeah, that you're like, holy crap, I don't know if I can do this. You know, which is what I'm feeling right now in terms of The Hollywood Reporter. It's like, holy crap, I don't know if I can do this.
Video exclusive.
So I think you have to take yourself out of your comfort zone all the time so that you can and put yourself, Anmol, in. So going to festivals really opened my head. Because if we just stay with watching Hindi cinema, which I love and I will love till my dying breath. I've told Vinod, I want Bidi Jalale playing at my funeral. You know, but we can't just stay in that little pond of the same kind of cinema, the same people. We've got to keep enlarging what we are consuming. And world cinema has opened my eyes, going to festivals, because again, it just makes you aware of how little you know and how much there is to watch and learn and discover. I think that's important. Just be a learner.
Not to get stuck in this sort of a rut of the same Friday release mundanity that comes, right?
That's the problem. Because then, I'll tell you, dheere dheere na, your love starts to curdle a little and you're like, yaar, ek aur. And when the day you feel, ek aur dekhni hai, going into the theatre, don't
And
go.
it reflects in your review. You're that senile old man then.
Because then you're just unhappy.
Yeah.
And then what's the point? Like, because I see our jobs, Anmol, as sharing the joy.
Yeah, of course, 100%.
है ना? Like when you cheered for Kalki and I cheered for Kalki, we want to go out and share that.
Yeah.
And say to 5 more people, jaake dekho. So I feel if you can't share the joy, then you shouldn't do it. But keep that joy alive.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you for being so gracious. And
Thank
these
you.
jam sessions have been really, really a learning experience for me, and I'll always cherish it. So
Thank you and more power to you.
Yes.
Just keep going.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am.